how I went from hard stuck to this. In this series, I would like to show you the concepts that allow me to achieve Challenger in TFT. While itemization might seem simple on the surface, oh, you just have to build BIS on all your carries and you'll be fine. There are many concepts within itemization that makes this part of the game quite difficult and is, in my opinion, one of the most difficult parts of TFT. The first thing I would like to go through is making sure you get some form of shred or sunder and anti-heal onto your composition. We'll be focusing on shred and sunder first. The first thing you want to identify is what type of composition are we playing. Are we playing around an AD carry, or are we playing around an AP carry? If you're playing around an AD carry, we would like to get sunder, and if you're playing around an AP carry, we would like to get shred. There are multiple ways to get shred and sunder. You can get them either through items, units, or augments. For items, you have the option of getting Last Whisper or Even Shroud, and for shred, you have the options of Shiv or Ionic Spark. There are also units that provide shred and sunder. For Sunder, we have either Yorick or we have Lucian. Just be careful with Lucian, as Lucian provides flat armor reduction, which means it's different from Last Whisper and Even Shroud, which are percentage Sunders. This means that they can actually stack on top of each other and work synergistically. So if you get Last Whisper onto Lucian, you actually get the percentage shred and the flat armor shred on top of that, which is pretty good. And for shred, we have Ziggs or Kale. The last way we can get shred or sunder is through the augments. The last way we can get shred or sunder is through augments, such as Sticks and Stones and Exposed Weakness. Exposed Weakness only provides shred and sunder to executioner units, and Sticks and Stones provides shred and sunder to any champions that are not holding any items. For anti-heal, it's very similar to shred and sunder. You can obtain this either through items, units, and augments as well. Items that provide you with anti-heal are Red Buff, Sunfires, and Morellos, and the units that provide it are Corki and Katarina. And augments that provide this is Blistering Strikes. So, Blistering Strikes. The next concept we are going to cover is making sure you have 3 items on your carry and 3 items on your tank as soon as possible. So I see a lot of people when they play, they're going to try the greed for BIS TF, so they're going to put, example, this Shiv onto the Sona instead. But what you probably should do is try to make sure you have all your items together like this. So 3 items carry and 3 items tank. Some people even put the Sunfires on Zac because they think that they want to get a proper tank item. But I think it's better to make sure you get 3 item tank and 3 item carry. The reason for this is multiplicative scaling. Let's use TF as an example. Let's say we have a Twisted Fate with Rabadon Deathclap slammed. This means that our TF, when he casts, will hit really hard. So what is the best way to increase his damage from here? We could say add an Archangels. What does this do? It makes the cast hit even harder. But I think a better way to increase his damage is to add something like a Shojin, which increased the number of casts. From here, we can add even more damage by using multiplicative scaling items, such as Guardbreaker. This item gives a percentage increase which multiplies on top of the damage instead of adding more AP, which is an additive scaling. Other substitutes for Guardbreaker is GS. That's another item that scales multiplicatively, and Gunblade is also good as you can heal your frontline, allowing TF to get more casts off. There are also several replacements for mana gen. I think Guinsus is fine as a replacement mana gen item, and even Red Buff will double up as a mana gen item and an anti-heal item. Another item that you can use over Rabadon's Deathcap is Archangel Staff for more AP. The next concept we are going to be talking about today is managing your item economy. So what is it that we're referring to when we talk about managing your item economy? Managing your item economy refers to the idea of maximizing the odds of having 3 carry items and 3 tank items by the end of your game. In TFT, we are guaranteed a certain number of components by the end of stage 4, a minimum of 12 components, which means at worst, we will get 3 tank items and 3 carry items if we manage our item economy properly. There are a few main situations where you will have to think about your item economy. 1 is what items to slam after creep rounds. 2, carousel rounds in terms of what to pick up. And the last one is during component anvil or item portals. We won't cover item portals much, but this is one thing you should consider while you're in item portals. I think here we have a good example of Robin managing his item economy well. In this spot, he could have chose to slam Gambler's Blade, Shojin, and Morelos on Bard, but instead he chooses to slam Shojin, Gamblers on Bard, and makes Ionic Spark on Taric. This allows him to later make Belt into either an offensive item or defensive item, depending on what he gets dropped from mini rounds in the future. The next thing we're going to talk about is core items versus flex items on units. A good way to do this is go to tactics.tools and go to top comps and look up the comp that you're currently playing. I will use Heartsteel Ezreal Z as an example. So if you open up this comp and go to the items tabs, we will see that there are numbers down here, these minus and pluses. These are talking about the delta of the comp with these items. What delta mean is the change of placement that is expected given that you have this item on that unit. So an example here, if you have IE on Ezreal, your placement increases by 0.26. Decreases, so you place better by minus 0.26, which is a good thing. And positive delta, it means you place higher on average, which is worse. So an example here is that you can see that healing items look really important on Zed, so BT or Hodge or Gunblade. And Edge of Night is also really important. So I would consider those core items on Zed. If we look at Ezreal, we can see that a lot of the items, blue buff, red buff, IE, all have negative delta, and blue buff is significantly better than Shojin, so you would try to prioritize this item. GS is an interesting item because the later the game goes, generally GS gets better. This means that GS will usually have good stats in the data no matter what, so it's a bit hard to look at GS here and think whether it's a core item or not. Another way you can do this is you can go to the Explorers page. I have the Advanced Explorer, so it's a bit easier to do this. Let's say we look at Zed, 2-star, 3 items, and we exclude Edge of Night. You can see that the average placement goes from 3.95 to 4.17, which is a big drop. This is also another way you can verify whether an item is good on the unit. If you put 2-star 3 items, you can look at the delta here, and you can see every single one. The last concept we are going to discuss has to do with counting components. Here I will use Paint to create an analogy as to how components are distributed in TFT. Let's imagine we have a bag full of components. As we remove components from the bag, we are less likely to get the same component back again. This affects what we will take off Carousel. An example of when this would be applicable is, let's say we want to make Even Shroud as our next item, and we have an option of taking either MR or Belt off Carousel. If we have natural Belt but we have not natural MR, we should take Belt off Carousel, and we have a lower chance of naturally another Belt in the future, but we have a higher chance of naturally MR. In this section, I will try to give you some real game examples by pro players in NA, and break down what I think they were thinking while making these decisions. Here we can see that Robin has opened Bow and Cloak on bench. He's not slamming Runans as he's saving MR to make an Even Shroud. Now a bit later on, we get the 3-2, and he takes Big Grab Bag. He has 2 MRs, Sword, Bow, and Armor open. Here he is considering which item is better to slam between BT and Edge of Night, as he will always have an extra cloak open to keep for Even Shroud. I think the argument for slamming BT over Edge of Night is that BT is a better item now, but Edge of Night is an item that is better in the late game, where there is higher single target DPS and you need it to protect your melee carry. BT also guarantees that you have healing onto your melee carry, which is one of the core items for all melee carries. With these concepts, you will have to learn how to slowly incorporate them into your gameplay. How I would approach this is mainly through recording your own VODs and watching key moments such as item choices on Carousel and items you slammed after neutral rounds, and thinking about other options that you could have taken or other combinations of items that you could have slammed given the spot that you were in order to satisfy the concepts that were presented in this video. I hope that you guys have learned something new in this video, and if you have any questions about itemization, feel free to leave it in the comments below and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. Thanks for watching.